Chosen one. Take a moment and be still, because this is far more than another message crossing your path. It is a divine appointment, and your spirit has already begun to recognize it. There are rare moments when heaven draws near in a way that cannot be explained, when the unseen touches the visible, and something deep within you awakens without warning. This is one of those sacred moments. You were not brought here by coincidence. You were led here because there are signs within your life, signs of a calling that only a few will ever recognize. Anointed one, you have sensed them for a long time. Even if you never found the words to describe them, you have always felt different in a quiet, unshakable way. There has been a weight upon your heart, a sense that your life carries a purpose beyond ordinary circumstances. That feeling has never been the product of imagination. It has been the quiet recognition of what God placed inside you before your journey ever began. The scriptures remind us that before you were formed, God already knew you. He did not simply observe your life from a distance. He chose you, set you apart, and prepared you for a purpose that would require both grace and endurance. Whenever God separates someone for his purpose, he also provides the strength, protection, and refinement needed to fulfill that calling. The seasons you have endured were never meaningless. The loneliness, the stretching, the hidden struggles that no one else understood were not signs that you had been abandoned. They were preparing your heart for a level of spiritual authority that speaks more through its presence than through its words, quietly transforming every place it enters. If this message has reached you today, it is because heaven is bringing different pieces of your journey into alignment. Remain attentive and stay connected, because what is being revealed now may help you understand truths that have been hidden in plain sight. The signs you are beginning to notice are not new. They are simply becoming clear for the first time. Chosen one. Hear this with an open heart. What you once labeled as weakness has never been weakness at all. It has been evidence that your life was shaped for something uncommon. The very struggles that made you question yourself have often been the same experiences that prepared you for your greatest purpose. There were many times when you quietly looked at your life and wondered why everything seemed more difficult for you than it did for others. You questioned why your path required so much perseverance, why your heart felt so deeply, and why your journey never seemed to follow ordinary patterns. Yet those very questions were pointing toward a deeper reality. God was preparing you in ways that could only be accomplished through the road you have traveled. You tried to do what others did. You tried to fit into systems that seemed to work for everyone else. You watched people move forward with ease, while you carried an invisible weight that no one could explain to you. And deep down, there was always that silent tension, that feeling that something about you didn't belong here. But Anointed One, what if I told you that tension was not rejection, it was recognition? There is a design on your life that does not follow ordinary patterns. You were not created to be validated by outcomes the world understands. You were created to operate from a different source entirely, and that is why your confirmation has never come through the same channels as others. While others measure success in visible results, your life has always been shaped by invisible alignment. You have lived as a contradiction. There are days you carry wisdom far beyond your years, and then moments where you feel like you are just trying to understand the basics of life. You can sit with someone's pain and feel it as if it were your own. Yet at the same time, there is a quiet strength in you that unsettles darkness without you saying a single word. You have endured things that should have hardened you, yet somehow your heart still remains open. That is not confusion. That is not imbalance. That is your design. Chosen one, you were never built for simplicity. You were built for depth. You were built to feel what others ignore, to perceive what others overlook, to carry atmospheres that most people would collapse under. And yes, it has cost you something. You have given more than you received. You have understood people who never understood you. You have poured into others only to find yourself standing alone when you needed someone to stand with you. And in those quiet moments, you wondered if something was wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. You are carrying a different frequency, and that frequency does not always translate in a world that is still learning how to hear truth. There is a reason why you can walk into a room and feel everything without anyone speaking. A reason why you sense shifts before they happen. A reason why certain environments drain you, while others awaken something in your spirit instantly. That sensitivity you tried to suppress, that awareness you thought was too much. It was never meant to be shut down. It is your filtration system. God placed it within you so you could discern what is aligned and what is not. So you could navigate spaces others move through blindly. So you could carry clarity in places filled with confusion. But understand this. That kind of awareness comes with pressure because you don't get to live unconsciously. While others can ignore what they feel, you are confronted with it. While others can remain comfortable in misalignment, your spirit reacts. And sometimes that reaction feels like exhaustion, like frustration, like isolation. You have walked away from things others would have stayed in. You have felt disconnected in places where you were expected to belong, and you questioned yourself for it. But that wasn't instability. That was discernment, chosen one. Your life has never been random. Even the hardships you faced early, the misunderstandings, the misjudgments, the way people seemed to project things onto you that were never truly yours. That was not coincidence. That was spiritual awareness without explanation. There were moments where you felt watched, evaluated, even rejected without fully understanding why. Times where you were treated differently before you even had the chance to show who you were, and it left a mark on you. But hear this clearly. You were not being singled out because you were less. You were being marked because you carried more. Before you understood your identity, something in the unseen already recognized your presence, and that is why certain battles started early. That is why certain pressures felt disproportionate to your age, your situation, your understanding. It was never about what you had done. It was about what you carry. And yet you are still here, not hardened, not closed off, not completely broken. There is still softness in you, still hope, still a willingness to love, even after everything you've experienced. That is not weakness. That is authority, because true authority is not proven by control. It is revealed by what remains in you after pressure tries to remove it. And you, chosen one, have remained. You have not fully understood your path, but you have always felt it pulling you. That quiet knowing that there is something more, something beyond what you can currently see, something that has been forming behind the scenes of your life. You may not have had the language for it. You may not have had clarity, but you have felt it. That persistent sense that your life is leading somewhere specific, even when nothing around you seems to confirm it. That is not imagination. That is memory. There is something in your spirit that remembers the assignment before your mind can comprehend it, and that is why you cannot settle. That is why comfort never fully satisfies you. That is why even when things seem stable, there is still a part of you searching for alignment. You were not sent here to drift. You were sent here with direction already embedded within you. And everything you have walked through, every delay, every confusion, every unexpected turn has been shaping your capacity to carry what is coming. But here is where it becomes real, because your path is not optional. There are people who can ignore their calling for years and still remain unchanged. But you get shaken. You get stretched. You get confronted with growth, whether you are ready or not. And you have felt that those seasons where everything seems to break at once, where you are forced to face things you would rather avoid, where your life feels like it is being dismantled and rebuilt at the same time. It is not punishment. It is precision. Because what you carry cannot remain dormant. When you rise, things around you shift. When you remember who you are, something in the unseen begins to move. And that is why your growth feels intense. You are not just living your life. You are influencing timelines you cannot yet see. And that is why the pressure never fully leaves, because you were never meant to stay the same. You were meant to awaken. And now, chosen one, something in you is beginning to recognize this truth, not just intellectually, but spiritually. You are starting to see that your difference was never a problem to fix. It was a signal to understand, and what you are about to realize next will take this even deeper. Chosen one, as this awareness begins to settle into your spirit, something else starts to rise within you, something that has always been there, but never fully understood. It is the sense that your life has been preparing you, not randomly, not vaguely, but intentionally for something greater than what you can currently see. You have said it before, maybe not out loud, but in the quiet spaces of your mind, that feeling that you are here for something more, not in a prideful way, not in comparison to others, but in a way that feels deeply personal, almost like a memory trying to surface. That feeling did not come from your imagination. It came from your assignment. There is a pattern in your life that you may not have fully recognized yet. You're drawn into situations that stretch you beyond your comfort. You encounter challenges that seem unusually intense. You find yourself in environments that feel like training grounds more than destinations, and at times you have wondered why your life feels like a constant preparation rather than a place of arrival. But anointed one, that is because you were never meant to arrive early. There is a process that Omega-level souls walk through, a process that does not always make sense while you're inside of it. You are shaped through experiences that refine your discernment, your resilience, your awareness. You are placed in moments where you have to grow without guidance, where you have to trust without confirmation, where you have to continue without knowing exactly where you are going. It can feel isolating. There are seasons where you feel like you are the only one navigating what you are facing, times where you wish someone could simply explain what is happening to you, times where you question if you are on the right path because nothing looks the way you expected it to look. But what you are walking through is not confusion. It is construction. Think about the moments where everything seemed to slow down in your life, where doors did not open the way you thought they would, where progress felt delayed, where you were left in spaces of waiting that tested your patience and your faith. Those were not wasted seasons. Those were building seasons. There are things that cannot be given to you until your foundation can sustain them. And your life has been focused on building that foundation in ways that are not always visible from the outside. While others were moving forward quickly, you were being developed deeply. And depth always takes time. You have been learning how to stand when things are uncertain, how to remain steady when emotions fluctuate, how to discern truth in environments where clarity is not easily found. These are not small lessons. These are essential, because what you carry requires stability, There have been moments where you felt like you were being pulled in different directions, where your circumstances did not match what you felt internally, where your external reality seemed disconnected from the internal, knowing that something greater was unfolding. That tension is not a mistake. It is alignment forming. You are learning how to trust what you cannot yet see. You are learning how to move without needing constant reassurance. You are learning how to recognize your path even when it doesn't look like anyone else's. And that is not easy. There are days where you feel strong, grounded, clear, and then there are days where you feel uncertain, questioning, even tired of the process. Days where you wish things would just make sense already. Days where you want clarity more than anything else. That is human. But even in those moments, something in you does not allow you to completely disconnect. Something keeps pulling you back to the awareness that your life is not ordinary, that your path is not random, that there is something unfolding that you are meant to walk through, not avoid. That pull is not pressure. It is purpose. Chosen one. You are not being led in the same way others are led. Your path is not designed for comfort. It is designed for activation, and that is why stagnation does not last long in your life. That is why, when you try to settle into something that is not aligned, something within you begins to react. You have felt that before. That discomfort that shows up when something is off. That quiet voice that tells you this is not it. Even when everything looks fine on the surface, that internal resistance that makes it difficult to stay in places where your spirit is not fully at peace. That is not instability. That is clarity. You were not sent here to simply participate in life. You were sent here to influence it. And influence requires awareness. It requires discernment. It requires the ability to recognize what is aligned and what is not. And that ability has been developed in you through experience. There are things you understand now that you did not understand before. There are patterns you can see now that you couldn't see before. There are environments you can read now without needing explanation. That is growth. And that growth didn't come easily. It came through moments where you had to learn the hard way. Moments where you had to trust your instincts after ignoring them. Moments where you had to walk away from things that once felt important. Moments where you had to let go of what was familiar to make space for what was true. That takes strength. And not just physical strength, but spiritual strength, because letting go is not always easy. Walking away is not always clear. Choosing alignment over comfort often feels like loss before it feels like clarity. But every time you chose alignment, even when it was difficult, you strengthened your ability to walk in your assignment. You are becoming more aware of what you carry, more aware of how your presence affects environments, more aware of the impact of your decisions, more aware of the responsibility that comes with your awareness. And with that awareness comes a shift. You begin to realize that your life is not just about you. It is about what flows through you. There are people who will encounter you and feel something shift without understanding why. There are conversations you will have that will stay with others long after they leave. There are moments where your presence alone will create clarity in spaces filled with confusion, not because you are trying to do it, but because you are carrying it, and that is where things begin to change. Because once you become aware of what you carry, you can no longer live the same way. You can no longer ignore what you feel. You can no longer pretend not to see what is clear to you. You can no longer remain in environments that contradict your alignment. And that is where the real transition begins, because awareness leads to responsibility, and responsibility leads to transformation. You're not just being shown who you are. You're being invited to live it. And that invitation will require something from you. It will require honesty. It will require courage. It will require the willingness to move differently, even when it feels unfamiliar, because what you are stepping into cannot be lived halfway. And as this realization deepens, something else begins to unfold within you, something that shifts not just how you see your path, but how the unseen begins to respond to your presence. Chosen one, as your awareness expands, you begin to notice something that once felt subtle, but now feels undeniable. There is a response happening around you that cannot be explained by logic alone. Situations shift when you are present. Conversations carry a different weight when you speak. Even your silence seems to communicate something deeper than words. And at first, you may have dismissed these moments as coincidence, but they have been happening too consistently to ignore. There is a level of spiritual authority resting on your life that you did not earn through effort, but through alignment. It is not loud. It does not need recognition, and it does not announce itself. But it is real, and the unseen recognizes it. Even when you do not fully understand it yourself, you have had moments that you could not explain, dreams that stayed with you longer than they should have, impressions that came to you without warning, but later proved to be accurate, encounters that felt too real to be imagination, too precise to be random. You may not have spoken about them openly, because you did not always have the language to describe them. But they were not meaningless. They were reminders. There is a connection within you that does not rely on physical evidence, a sensitivity to the spiritual atmosphere that goes beyond observation. And while others move through life depending on what they can see, you have always felt guided by something deeper, something internal. Something that speaks in ways that are not always easy to explain. That is not confusion. That is access. Chosen one. There are realms of understanding that cannot be taught externally. They are revealed internally through experience, through stillness, through alignment, and you have been walking in that revelation even before you realized what it was. There have been times when you met someone and felt an immediate familiarity, as if you understood them beyond what was said. Times when you entered spaces and sensed tension or peace before anything outward confirmed it. Times when you felt warnings or nudges that did not make sense in the moment, but later revealed their purpose. You are not imagining these things. You are discerning them, and the more you begin to trust that discernment, the clearer your path becomes, because when you understand who you are, you stop second-guessing what you carry. There is a passage in Acts where even spiritual forces recognize authority when it is present, not because of titles, not because of status, but because of identity. That is the kind of authority you are stepping into, not something you force, but something you embody. When you are aligned, your presence carries weight, not in a way that dominates, but in a way that shifts. You do not have to try to change environments. You do not have to prove anything. You simply have to remain rooted in who you are, and what is not aligned begins to adjust around you. That is influence, and it does not come from striving for. It comes from remembering. But this level of awareness also brings separation. You have felt it. That sense of being on the edge of spaces, even spaces that are supposed to feel familiar. That awareness that conversations sometimes stay on the surface while your spirit is searching for depth. That quiet realization that not everyone sees what you see and not everyone is ready to understand it. And that can feel lonely. There have been moments where you questioned if you should adjust, if you should simplify yourself, if you should try to blend in just to make things easier. Moments where you wondered if being understood was more important than being aligned. But every time you tried to conform, something in you resisted, not out of rebellion, but out of truth, because you were never designed to fit into environments that require you to silence your clarity. You were designed to recognize, to challenge, to bring awareness, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it costs you connection, even when it requires you to stand alone for a moment. There is a clarity in you that does not allow you to stay where truth is diluted, a discernment that sees beyond appearances and into the structure of what is real. And that is not something you learned. That is something you carry. And yes, it has created distance at times, but that distance is not failure. It is positioning, because you cannot carry truth and remain in places that require compromise. And as this becomes clearer to you, you begin to understand something deeper about your role. You are not here to find your place. You are here to bring alignment. There is a difference. Many people spend their lives searching for environments that accept them. But you were not sent here for acceptance. You were sent here for activation. And activation does not always feel comfortable. It disrupts, it reveals, it shifts. There are times when your presence alone will bring things to the surface, not because you are trying to do anything, but because what you carry creates contrast. And not everyone is ready for that contrast. Some will be drawn to it. Others will resist it. But both reactions are responses to the same thing, truth. And you are learning that you cannot measure your impact by how people respond to you, because your role is not to be agreed with. Your role is to remain aligned, and alignment carries a frequency that does not need validation. As you continue to grow in this awareness, something else begins to unfold. You start to realize that your connection is not just internal, it is bridging. There are moments where time feels different, where your awareness shifts beyond the present moment, where you feel connected to something that is not bound by your immediate reality. You have experienced stillness that felt deeper than rest. Moments where clarity came without effort. Times where you felt like you were not just observing life, but participating in something larger than what could be seen. Those moments were not random. They were alignment, because your relationship with the divine is more than belief. It has become part of who you are. You are not merely reaching toward heaven, you are allowing its presence to shape your life from within. And once that reality takes hold, everything begins to change. Your words carry greater wisdom. Your actions become more intentional, and your responses are guided by peace instead of impulse. You no longer live as someone constantly reacting to circumstances. Instead, you move with spiritual awareness. From that place, life begins to unfold differently. Doors open without striving. Obstacles lose their grip. And opportunities appear with a sense of divine timing rather than human effort. This does not mean every challenge disappears. It means you are no longer resisting the purpose for which you were created. You begin walking in harmony with God's design instead of struggling against it. That is where genuine transformation takes root, not in changing who you are, but in becoming fully aligned with who you were always meant to be. At that point, the journey is no longer centered on discovering your identity. The greater challenge is living faithfully according to that identity every single day. Many people stop at understanding, but true growth begins when understanding is translated into action. Chosen one. This is the moment where awareness gives way to responsibility. Once heaven has opened your eyes, you cannot continue living as though nothing has changed. Once you recognize the calling resting upon your life, you can no longer treat your days as ordinary or your purpose as optional. This is where many become hesitant. It is rarely because they lack understanding. It is because they realize that real alignment demands real change. There comes a season when simply knowing the truth is no longer enough. Wisdom that is never lived eventually becomes a burden instead of a blessing. As your spirit continues to awaken, you begin to notice subtle changes within yourself. Places that once brought comfort now leave you unsettled. Conversations that once felt natural no longer bring peace. Habits, environments, and relationships that once seemed acceptable begin to feel out of step with the person God is shaping you to become. These moments are not signs that something is wrong. They are evidence that your heart is being prepared for something greater. The discomfort you feel is not confusion. It is an invitation to move beyond awareness and into faithful obedience. Heaven is calling you to become the person you have already begun to recognize within your spirit. This invitation is not about pretending to be someone new. It is about fully embracing the identity God has been revealing to you all along. As you respond with faith, your life begins to reflect that calling more clearly, and every step forward brings you into deeper alignment with the purpose prepared for you from the very beginning. And embodiment means you begin to live according to what you have recognized. Not according to what is convenient. It means you start to guard what you allow into your space. Not from fear, but from awareness, because you now understand that everything you engage with has an effect on your alignment. You have experienced this already. There are environments that leave you drained without explanation. Conversations that scatter your focus, distractions that seem small on the surface, but leave you feeling disconnected afterward. And you have wondered why you react this way when others seem unaffected. It is because you are not designed to carry everything. You are designed to filter, and that means you must become intentional with your attention. What you listen to matters. What you give your time to matters. What you allow into your mind matters, because your clarity is not automatic. It is maintained. And the more aligned you become, the more sensitive you are to what disrupts that alignment. This is not limitation. This is refinement. There are things you can no longer entertain without consequence. Patterns you can no longer participate in without feeling the effect. And at first, this can feel restrictive. It can feel like you are losing options, losing connections, losing comfort. But in reality, you are gaining precision. You are learning how to protect your capacity, because what you carry requires space to remain clear. This is where discipline becomes essential. Not as a rule, but as a structure. Prayer becomes more than a habit. It becomes a connection point, a way to recalibrate when your thoughts become scattered, a place where you return to clarity when the noise around you becomes overwhelming. Stillness becomes more than silence. It becomes alignment. A moment where you are not reacting, not performing, not trying to keep up, but simply present to where grounded. You begin to understand that these practices are not separate from your life. They are part of how you sustain it, because your role is not just to receive insight, it is to carry it, and carrying something requires maintenance. You cannot build something significant on a foundation that is constantly distracted. You cannot walk in clarity while surrounding yourself with confusion. You cannot remain aligned if you are consistently pulled in different directions. And you have felt the difference. The difference between being centered and being scattered. The difference between being grounded and being overwhelmed. The difference between being aligned and being reactive. And once you recognize that difference, you begin to choose differently. Not perfectly, but intentionally. There will still be moments where you feel tired, moments where your clarity feels distant, moments where you question if you are doing things the right way. That does not disappear, but it no longer defines you because you are learning how to return to alignment, and that return becomes faster, more natural, more consistent. You begin to notice that when you are aligned, everything feels clearer. Your decisions feel grounded. Your direction feels steady. Your presence feels calm. And when you are not aligned, your spirit responds quickly. That response is not punishment. It is guidance. It is your internal system showing you where adjustment is needed, and instead of ignoring it, you begin to listen. This is maturity, not perfection, but awareness in action. You're no longer trying to control everything around you. You are learning how to remain steady within yourself. And that steadiness creates influence, because when you are not easily moved, you become a reference point. People notice it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. There is something about you that doesn't react the same way others do. Something about you that remains composed in situations that would normally create chaos. Something about you that brings clarity without needing to explain everything. That is alignment. And it does not come from effort. It comes from consistency. The more you choose alignment, the more natural it becomes. The more you protect your space, the clearer your signal becomes. The more you stay rooted, the less external noise affects you. And this is where your life begins to change in a way that is not always visible at first. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop forcing progress. You stop trying to prove yourself, because you begin to understand that your role is not to make things happen. It is to remain aligned. So what is meant for you can recognize you. There is a shift that happens here. You move from striving to allowing, from reacting to responding, from searching to embodying. And as you do, things begin to align in ways that feel different from before. Opportunities come without pressure. Connections form without effort. Direction becomes clearer without constant questioning. Not because life becomes simple, but because you're no longer working against yourself. You are moving in rhythm. And rhythm is not something you force. It is something you follow. There is a passage that speaks about renewal, about transformation through the mind. Not by conforming to patterns that do not align with truth, and that transformation is exactly what you are stepping into. Not becoming someone new, but remembering who you have always been and living from that place. This is where embodiment becomes real. You are no longer waiting for confirmation. You are becoming the confirmation. You are no longer asking for signs. You are recognizing that your life itself is the sign, and that realization changes how you move. Because now you understand that your presence carries weight. Your decisions carry impact. Your alignment carries influence. And you can no longer afford to live disconnected from that. This is where many step back, because it requires letting go. Letting go of the version of you that was built around survival. Letting go of patterns that kept you comfortable, but not aligned. Letting go of the need to be understood by everyone. And that can feel like loss. There are relationships that shift, environments that no longer feel right, identities that no longer fit, and it can feel like everything is changing at once. But what is falling away was never meant to remain. It was part of the process, not the destination. And what remains is clearer, stronger, more aligned. This is not about becoming distant. It is about becoming true. And truth has a way of simplifying what once felt complicated. You begin to speak less, but with more clarity. You begin to move less, but with more intention. You begin to engage less, but with more purpose, because you are no longer trying to be everything. You are simply being aligned, and that alignment carries more power than effort ever could. You are stepping into a place where your life is no longer driven by external validation, where your identity is no longer dependent on how others respond to you, where your direction is no longer shaped by what is expected of you. You are becoming anchored, and when you are anchored, you are not easily moved. Not by pressure, not by opinion, not by circumstance. You remain steady, and that steadiness creates a different kind of strength, one that does not need to prove itself, one that does not need to defend itself, one that simply is. And this is where you begin to understand what it truly means to live in alignment, not as an idea, but as a reality. And as this becomes more consistent, something even deeper begins to unfold within you. Something that shifts not just how you live, but how you see everything around you. Unchosen one, as this depth of alignment settles into your life, something begins to quiet within you, not because everything around you has changed, but because something within you no longer reacts the same way it used to. The urgency to explain yourself fades. The need to prove your worth dissolves. The pressure to be understood by everyone no longer holds the same weight. You begin to realize that clarity does not require validation. There was a time when you tried to make everything make sense to others. You tried to translate what you felt into language that would be accepted, softened, or approved. You adjusted your voice, your presence, your expression, just to avoid being misunderstood. And it was exhausting. But now, something is different. You are no longer translating your truth for comfort. You are standing in it. And that shift changes everything. Because when you stop adjusting yourself to be received, you begin to live in a way that is grounded in truth, not reaction. You are no longer navigating life based on how others might respond. You are moving based on what is aligned. And alignment does not need permission. There is a steadiness forming in you that is not easily shaken. You still feel, you still experience moments of uncertainty. You still move through human emotions, but they no longer take control. They pass through you instead of defining you. That is strength. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of grounding. You are learning how to observe without collapsing, how to respond without overextending, how to remain centered, even when things around you feel unstable. And this changes how you experience life. You no longer chase moments to feel connected. You become the connection. You no longer seek external confirmation to feel secure. You are rooted in something deeper. You begin to notice that when you are aligned, there is a quiet authority in your presence. Not something loud or forceful, but something steady, something consistent. It does not demand attention, but it is felt. That is maturity. Not in how much you know, but in how you carry what you know. There is a difference between seeking power and becoming stable, and you are stepping into stability, a place where your identity is not shifting with every situation, a place where your direction is not constantly questioned, a place where your presence remains grounded, regardless of what is happening externally. And from that place, influence flows naturally. You do not have to force change. You do not have to convince others. You do not have to prove anything. You simply remain aligned. And what is not aligned begins to adjust around you. That is the kind of authority that does not fade because it is not built on external conditions. It is built on internal alignment, and as you continue walking in this, you begin to understand something that changes how you see your journey entirely. There is no final destination where everything becomes fixed and complete. There is no moment where you arrive and everything stops shifting. This path moves in cycles, in seasons, in layers. There will be moments where you feel clear and grounded, and moments where you are stretched again, moments where you feel established, and moments where you are refined further. That is not instability. That is growth. You are both learning and leading at the same time, both evolving and stabilizing, both releasing and receiving. And that duality is not weakness. It is wisdom because it keeps you aware. It keeps you present. It keeps you connected to the process. You are not meant to become unreachable. You are meant to become real because what you carry is not meant to isolate you from others. It is meant to awaken something within them. And that awakening does not come from perfection. It comes from authenticity, from living fully aligned, even in the presence of uncertainty, from showing that clarity is not about having all the answers, but about remaining grounded in truth. And that is what people respond to. Not your words alone, but your presence, the way you move, the way you remain steady, the way you do not collapse under pressure, the way you choose alignment even when it is not easy. That speaks louder than explanation ever could. And now you are standing at a point where a decision must be made. Not a decision based on external factors, but one that is internal. Are you willing to fully, because partial alignment is no longer an option? You cannot return to a version of yourself that no longer fits. You cannot ignore what you now understand. You cannot continue to live in ways that contradict your awareness, and that can feel intense, because stepping fully into alignment means letting go of what is familiar. It means releasing versions of yourself that were built for survival, but not for purpose. It means accepting that your path may not always be understood by others, but it also means freedom. Freedom from constantly adjusting, freedom from seeking approval, freedom from living in contradiction. You begin to move with clarity even when your voice feels uncertain. You begin to choose truth even when it is uncomfortable. You begin to protect your peace without explanation. You no longer argue with what is misaligned. You simply step away from it. You no longer chase recognition. You allow your presence to speak. You no longer force outcomes. You remain aligned and let what is meant for you come into place. And as you do, you will notice something. People will recognize something in you without knowing how to explain it. Some will be drawn to it. Some will resist it. But all will feel it, because alignment creates impact, not through effort, but through consistency. You are not here to be accepted by everyone. You are here to activate something within those who are ready. And that activation does not require performance. It requires presence. Chosen one. Breathe. Your life is not ordinary. It never has been. Every experience, every challenge, every moment of confusion, every season of waiting, it was all shaping something within you. You were not being rejected. You were being refined. You were not being delayed. You were being prepared. And now you see it. Now you understand that what felt like contradiction was intentional. That what felt like isolation was positioning. That what felt like pressure was development. You're not broken. You're built differently. Built to carry something that not everyone can carry. And now that you recognize it, you cannot unknow it. You cannot return to living small. You cannot continue to treat your calling as optional because it is not. It is your assignment. And living in that assignment does not require perfection. It requires presence. It requires awareness. It requires alignment. It means you guard your peace. You protect your time. You choose environments that support your clarity. You return to connection, not out of routine, but out of necessity. You listen when your spirit signals rest. You move when it signals action. You remain grounded, even when things shift around you, because you understand now that your life is not just about what you do, it is about what you carry. And when you carry it with alignment, everything begins to change. You become the evidence that clarity exists, that alignment works, that truth does not need validation to remain true. You become the message not through words alone, but through how you live, and that is what the world responds to. What has been placed within you was never intended to remain hidden or benefit only your own life. It was entrusted to you so that it could flow outward, bringing hope, encouragement, and transformation to people you may never even realize you have touched. The purpose you carry extends far beyond yourself. And now that you have begun to recognize it, your calling is to keep walking forward with unwavering faith, never returning to the limitations you have already left behind. This is not the true beginning of your journey. It is the moment you embrace it with full awareness. From this day forward, every decision, every step, and every season can be shaped by the understanding that God has been guiding you all along. What once felt uncertain is becoming clear because your heart is finally aligned with the purpose prepared for you. Chosen one, receive these words as more than the conclusion of a message. Let them become a milestone in your spiritual journey. What has awakened within your spirit today was not the result of coincidence. Heaven appointed this moment as a reminder of who you truly are, a sacred turning point where confusion begins to give way to clarity, where uncertainty is replaced with confidence, and where your life starts moving in harmony with the purpose written over you long before you entered this world. Anointed one, release every thought that tells you you are too late, or forgotten, or standing in the wrong place. None of those voices speak the truth. You are exactly where God has been preparing you to be. This season has already been seen by Him, carefully arranged according to His wisdom, and covered by His faithful hand. May your mind be filled with clear direction when questions arise. May God's peace remain over your heart when circumstances try to create fear. May fresh strength rise within you whenever weariness threatens to slow your steps, reminding you that His grace is always sufficient for the road ahead. May every hidden gift, every unseen part of your calling, and every promise God has planted within your life unfold with perfect timing and divine purpose. Trust that nothing entrusted to heaven is ever forgotten, and nothing prepared by God arrives outside of His perfect plan. If this message has confirmed what your spirit has been sensing, write Amen in the comments as a declaration that you are ready to embrace the calling God has revealed to you. Continue walking this journey with an open heart, remaining connected so you do not miss the encouragement and guidance prepared for each new season. Chosen one, move forward with spiritual awareness. Walk in faithful alignment with God's direction. Never forget that the purpose resting upon your life carries eternal significance. You were never created to disappear into the crowd or simply follow the patterns of the world. You were sent to reflect God's light, awaken hope in others, and fulfill the assignment He prepared for you. Now that you remember who you are, continue your journey with unwavering confidence, knowing that heaven goes before every step you take